Historically, America has often been compared to a melting pot, and no, not the kind you cook food in. The melting pot metaphor shows that citizens with a blend of cultures, traditions, and ethnicities reside in America, and although this is an oversimplification, it's true that America was founded on immigrants. I'm from a second immigration family, and today I will dive into my Indian subculture and the lessons I've learned from it. I've been immersed in Indian culture ever since birth and have visited every year since. I even lived in India for 8 months as a 4-year-old and attended preschool. By visiting so much, I learned how to speak Marathi fluently, a language which is native to the state Maharashtra. My parents and all the relatives I know are from India, so I'm really familiar with Indian culture. I love shopping for festive Indian clothes, eating Indian street food, celebrating Indian holidays, and most of all, reconnecting with my relatives when I visit India. India is such a large and densely populated country that Indian culture can mean vastly different things to different people. Taken in a literal way, Indian means that I'm a person of Indian descent. However, being Indian means a lot more to me. The Indian part of me is intertwined with my opinions about food, clothing, familial relationships, internal conflicts, my definition of home, and more. If I were an Indian, my life would look drastically different than it is today, meaning that I'd be a completely different person. To give a broad overview of Indian culture, I'd like to share a few general traits. Indian clothing is known for incorporating many colors, embroidery, and styles. Common examples of festive clothing are saris, kurtas, and dhotis. Some Indian holidays are Diwali, the festival of lights, Holi, the celebration of color, and Ganesha Chaturthi, which celebrates the god of wisdom, Ganesha. Now to my favorite topic, food. Although cooking styles vary from region to region, Indian food is known for using lots of spices like coriander, turmeric, and cardamom. Indian food is to be eaten with your hands and some type of grain like chapati, naan, or rice, rather than utensils. As far as religion and language, they vary from region to region as well. Each state has its native language and religion, but the most common language is Hindi and the most common religion is Hinduism. Since my family were immigrants, I wanted to learn about the history of Indian immigration to America. I learned that the relationship between Indian Americans and the American public has changed over time, for the worse and for the better. I'll start at the beginning. The first record of Indian immigration to the U.S. was in 1790, when captains from the East India Company brought Indians to Massachusetts to work as servants in their homes. A small number of Indians followed afterward, many being merchants. By 1900, the total Indian population was less than 1,000, but by 1910, this number tripled. Many immigrants came as low-skilled farm laborers and workers for the Western Pacific Railroad and the lumber mills in Washington state. The majority had low social class and low income. They came because they sought after the American dream and appreciated any opportunity to work. Heads of agricultural, lumber, and mining industries favored Indian laborers because they were generally willing to work more time for less pay compared to their European immigrant counterparts. That being said, Indian immigrants still face significant discrimination and racism. Due to the rising number of Asian immigrants on the West Coast, many white Americans would single out minorities like the Chinese, Japanese, and Indians. Whites saw Indians as a threat to employment, opportunity, American culture, and land acquisition. Organizations like the Asiatic Exclusion League and American Federation of Labor gathered through the media and helped pass laws that excluded Indians from labor, education, and housing. The movement inspired legal initiatives to restrict immigration. Indians and other Asians became the target of the Immigration Restriction Law of 1917, which led to mass deportations. An estimated 1,700 Indians were deported and 1,400 left voluntarily. Very few foreign-born Indian immigrants could become U.S. citizens, and only white immigrants could be naturalized and gain U.S. citizenship. Racial slurs like raghead and Hindu menace were thrown around. However, as South Asians continued to assimilate, more positive perceptions of them began to form in the U.S. As time passed, larger populations of Indians migrated. Most had the plan to earn riches in America, then return to India to support their families. However, most ended up staying in the U.S. because they saw more job opportunities and a stronger economy in America than in India. The largest wave of immigrants came with the passing of the 1965 U.S. Immigration and Nationality Act, which removed old quota systems. The previous system was based on racial traits and favored Europeans. The new one gave preference to immigrants with in-demand skills like technology because it would help the American economy. Through the new laws, large groups of Indians could come to the U.S. for an education, many of them attending Ivy League colleges. The immigration of Indians to the U.S. post-1965 can be grouped into three main categories. First is the highly educated group, with over 45% of immigrants gaining professional degrees in STEM fields like medicine and engineering. The second group came to be reunited with their family members that already had came to the U.S. The third group migrated at 5 times the rate of the previous two groups. They benefited from the high demand for information and technology, and the bulk came to work in IT. Most were from high social classes in India, so based on the old caste system, this would be the Brahmin group. Today, Indians have one of the highest immigrant populations in the U.S. Statistics from the 2010 census show that the Indian population in the U.S. grew from around 1.9 million in 2000 to 3.2 million in 2010, a growth rate of 68%. Indians are now the highest ethnic earning group in the U.S., with a median income of $100,000. I think the fact that Indians moved from being a highly discriminated group to a leading minority in the U.S. highlights a pattern of U.S. social culture. Over the history of America, new immigration groups have received discrimination. The race, religion, and ethnicity of these different groups changed throughout history, but the U.S. public's reaction to their arrival did not. People may claim to have reasons for hating those groups based on the specific time frame, but looking at a wider lens, the innate human reaction to fear those that are different from you becomes apparent. Just like Indians have faced discrimination as they came to the US, I faced my own struggles. I can recall a few instances when I was targeted for my race, like when kids at my middle school made rude comments about how I was eating my Indian food with my hands for lunch, or when one of my peers told me that the reason I received good grades was because I was Indian, not because of my work. However, I know that my experiences are nowhere near as bad as other minorities within the US, and I'm really grateful for the opportunities I've had. Many of my emotional struggles I've faced have to do with being bicultural. In America, Indians are a minority, so Indian culture isn't widely celebrated, which has made me feel isolated at times. However, the largest internal struggle has been being caught between my Indian and American halves. Although both sides of my family come from India, there's a big difference in the way they express Indian culture. My dad's side of the family are mostly atheists, while my mom's side are mostly Hindu and love to embrace their Indian culture. Since my mom's and dad's perception of India don't align, it's been challenging for me to understand how I want to express myself. With my dad's family, I worry that I'm acting too Indian, and with my mom's, I worry that I'm not Indian enough. Over time, I've learned that there's no correct way to express culture. Expressing culture is all about exploring what's important to you, understanding where you come from, and connecting to communities bigger than yourself or your family. I've learned to accept who I am and appreciate that my ratio of Indian to American culture differs from others around me, and I'm happy because it makes me unique. By actively researching and analyzing my subculture, I was able to pull more insights than I would have by just being a part of the subculture, and I have many takeaways. Before I finish, I'd like to share some. Firstly, I recognize that knowing where I come from is incredibly meaningful to me, and I hope to never lose touch of my family's history and culture. Secondly, I learned that a culture can't be defined in one way, and everyone has to go on their own path to learn what it means to them personally. Thirdly, I learned to not be afraid to embrace my culture, even if it's different from others. Like I said at the start, America is a melting pot, a mix of many diverse cultures, and I'm happy to be adding something new to the mix.